Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. I chuckle as I think about this conversation with Steve Cady. Why? Because he's got so much energy. He's so enthusiastic about what he does and what's going on in regard to his practice as a professor of management and director of the doctorate in organizational development and change at Bowling Green State University. You will agree, I'm sure, when you hear Steve, that this man is doing the thing he loves to do best. And that's why Peter Vale and I are so interested in practice. What a difference enthusiasm makes. Steve Cady. Well, folks, this time I have a wonderful opportunity to learn about Steve Cady, who is a professor of management and director of the doctorate in organizational development and change at Bowling Green State University. So those are his formal creds, but there's a lot more you can learn about Steve and his work. And hopefully some of it will emerge in this conversation, but I have to tell you, he and some of his colleagues are onto something pretty wonderful. And again, that will emerge. Wonderful for those of us whose minds are more like the balls rolling around a pool table than marching straight lines from thought to product. So Steve, when we first got on Zoom camera and before we started recording, you were busily jotting some thoughts down on your whiteboard. And then you took a picture because you didn't want to lose them. And then you mentioned that you even have a whiteboard available in the bathroom. So tell us a little bit about that particular way of enjoying yourself in a serious manner. How did that come to you? Has it always been something you've done? And what kind of thoughts were you writing on that board? I'm curious.
Well, I actually took them off, but I've been reflecting on, I have a morning practice where I stretch, meditate, and pray. And part of that is I have my personal strategy statement. And it's a mission, vision, goals, and principles framework. And I reflect on that. And in that, as the goals that I have are to be healthy, wealthy, wise, in love, accomplished, and at peace. And so I reflect on that. Now, in that, I have a variety of ways I have written it out and also use it for action planning in my life. So so if I'm healthy, what does that mean, right? And then how do I practice and how do I set specific objectives and work towards it and just kind of be mindful of actually doing something proactive around it and being aware of my progress or my lack thereof, and so forth, right? So I have a 17-year-old son, I have a 13 turning 14-year-old son, I have a 6-year-old son. And I don't think a day goes by where I don't think I could do a better job being a dad. I think it's I'm always thinking, what can I do? How can I be a better dad? I always think every day is a new day to be a better dad. So one of the things for my 17-year-old and my 14-year-old is helping them to have the base set of skills that they need to be successful in life. And I know my 17-year-old's about ready to graduate from high school and go off to college. And I've been reflecting on where are some of the holes or the gaps for him? And I was thinking, there's got to be a checklist of things like almost the Boy Scouts where I got to make sure he's got these things under his belt before he goes so he can be okay. And I was kind of reflecting. And then in the middle of the night at about I woke up about 4:30. I kind of thought, okay, well, it's the framework that I have for myself is what I want to share with him, but in a way that will work for him. So then I got up on the board, I just wrote down healthy, wealthy, wise, in love, accomplished, and at peace. And then I had 3 things underneath each with a specific task that I want him to be able to accomplish. And so, you got healthy, wealthy, wise, and love, accomplish, at peace. So there's 6 things. And 6 times 3 is 18 tasks that I want to make sure he's good at by the time he gets done. So I wrote down those tasks and thought, okay, this is so, and I went through and said, oh, he's good here. We've done this. Oh, we've got to do this here. Example being, I would like for him to have understand investing. And what does it mean if he were to invest $50 a month from now until he's 50, what would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Right? A budget. Make sure he's got a budget. He manages money pretty well, but I want him to actually do a real budget and a cash flow and do that. But I want to make sure he does it. And then insurance and taxes. I want to make sure he knows about it, but I got to make sure. So I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but that's the practical piece of taking my goals and translating them into action, but also what are the skills that I want my son to have. And my framework, actually, my 6 goals for me that I have really work. So that was what I was writing on the board.
Wow.
And then in the shower, there is some science. I'm trying to think what the term is called, but the best ideas a lot of times and best thinking happens when people are in the shower.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And there's actually some research on that. I remember reading it just this past year somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll sometimes have ideas and I'll jump out. I have a glass wall in my shower and then I have a big mirror. So I'll sometimes jump out and write a bunch of stuff on the mirror. I'll have images, I think visually in terms of pictures, geometric shapes and things and flow charts and diagrams. And I've done that since I was in junior high. That's about my geometry was my best subject.
Uh-huh.
And so I'll jump out and I'll draw, put it up there, and then I can relax because it'll bug me and it'll fly away. I always talk about butterfly thoughts. You get these great thoughts and they just kind of flitter away, and it's important to keep track of them.
Well, that's a wonderful introduction to you as a person who has a deeply rooted sense of what you want to be as a performer in life. And those six qualities are indisputably important to anyone, certainly to your boys. I commend you for that. But what I'm also hearing, Steve, is something from your teacher role, is that you're saying that while principles are important to recognize, while theories derived from principles tend to be a little more digestible in the sense of what the author intended, until it gets to the task level, it's not part of you. But once you bring those tasks out and to the touch, to the action, and therefore the feedback and the learning that now your son and sons will get, now we're talking.
Right.
And so that's a wonderful introduction. How does your way of being, Steve Cady, translate into your 2 major roles right now, being both the professor and the director of that org development and change doctoral program? Do you see any connections from your legacy of life and now where you are and where you're headed?
Well, there's another question in what you just said there. So so there's a lot in that. So as a professor, we have choices between teaching, research, and service, right? And we have those that are at different types of institutions. You have certain expectations in order to get to a level of tenure. If you're at a Research 1 or Research 2 level school, you have certain levels of expectations of how much you need to publish, where you publish, and that kind of stuff, along with teaching and student evaluations and those kinds of things. So that's a whole world, building a personal brand. A professor is a person who builds a personal brand. Some are better at it than others, and some are more able to contribute in what I call thought leadership ways to the world. Now you move over into a doctoral program, and you mentioned the word legacy. And I hadn't thought about it, but the doctorate in organizational development and change has been a goal and a specific objective of mine, probably for 15 years, maybe 20.
Wow.
Since I first got to BG, and I would talk about, hey, how can we, build this next level? Because we have the masters that started in 1975, and it's well known, well established. So I'm thinking, let's work on towards this doctorate. And my goal for the doctorate is that I think when a person gets a master's, they learn the tools and knowledge to be subject matter experts, and they learn the tools and knowledge to be on the journey to be a subject matter expert. And that is what we need more of: people practicing OD, good theory, good research, good evidence-based practices, translating the tools that they're learning in the program into action and use in their organizations and their communities and with the people that they coach and develop and serve. And so that's a master's. What is a doctorate? I am very keen on the notion that everybody has within them the ability to take knowledge, codify it into some type of tool or model or practice of their own that they can then offer to the world. And it can be done in a couple ways. One, it can be done in a company, and you work on a project, you get a certain result. You work on another project, you get a repeatable result. You start realizing that there's a certain set of things that you do to get a result in your organization that work well and are good for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
When you retire, die, leave, whatever it might be, it goes with you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm big on don't let your dreams, don't let your knowledge, don't let what you have die with you. Share it with the world.
Amen to that.
So what I would say is that person in that organization can then take what they have learned from those several projects and things that they worked on, write it up, put it into some type of description of what they did, and then they share it in the company, and it becomes part of the company's knowledge management base or knowledge base,
Mm-hmm.
organizational learning practice or whatever. And then other people go, oh, I like what David did. And did you see the thing that he put together? Oh, let's just take that and bring it in and let's make it a little bit different and use it for what we're using.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great way of taking one person's subject matter expertise and becoming a thought leader. In that example, that person is a thought leader in their organization. They are beginning to share what they've learned, share their thinking, their knowledge with others in a scalable fashion. Then somebody else has a book
Mm-hmm.
in their head, and that book can die with them, or they can share that book with the world and put it down. And a lot of people are good at getting to subject matter expert level. There's a very few people that go to the thought leader level,
I agree.
that document and share what they know in a way that's scalable and helps others. So now we come full circle back to the doctorate program at BGSU. In talking with people at BGSU, what I found people talking a lot about, and people that do organization development and change work, are in service of something greater than themselves.
Yes.
To the point that they give it away, to the point that they are willing to sacrifice, to the point that they are willing to even let their dreams die with them because they didn't take the time to really honor what they know and share it with the world in a, again, scalable, duplicatable way, right? So there's passive income where you make money while you sleep. There's also passive knowledge sharing where you are shared, your knowledge is getting shared while you sleep, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
right? So
Yeah, exactly.
there are very few people that do that in the field of organizational development change because they're so focused on helping others that they stop to take care of themselves. They stop taking care of themselves, and they stop honoring what they know to share with the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we come to the doctorate, and we start getting closer to where the university and the world's ready for a professional doctorate. And that was my first step, is us creating a professional doctorate, then an academic doctorate on top of it. So it's kind of a 1-2 type of doctoral program that we're working towards. And right now we got the professional doctorate running. And in the course of talking to people that are practicing, that are students in the program, which the average age is 48, they have 20, 30 years of experience, and they all have a dream that they want to share with the world. They all have this curiosity, lifelong learning approach, and they actually have something that they want, that legacy, that thing that they want to leave in the world. And in talking with them, it started becoming clear that what they want to be able to do is be able to teach about that thing. They want to be able to consult about that thing, and they want to lead with that thing, whatever it might be. Some people, it's diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Some people, it's leadership development. Some people, it's trauma in the workplace. Some people, it's motivating in production and agile environments. You got all these different people that have these passions, and they don't want that. I don't want that to die with them. And at the same time, they want to be able to do that as a consultant, as a leader, as an educator, and they want to have the ability to do that where they want, when they want, and how they want to do it. Mm-hmm. Making a living doing it, not giving it away. So that's what the program became. We started looking at how do you do that? And then it became real clear that a lot of these folks, they're subject matter experts. They're well respected. But when I ask them the question, have you shared it with others? Oh, yeah, but how do you do that? I can't. You think I could write this up? You mean I could do a workshop on my idea? I'm used to using that workshop over there. That's a certification workshop that somebody else created. Subject matter experts are really great at being certified, learning, and practicing other people's approaches, and that's really important.
Sure it is.
There's a few that want to go to the next level, and that's what, if I look at the difference between, if I look at a professor versus this doctoral program and what I'm doing, I teach and I research and I serve within my organization. The doctoral program is about creating something that helps people to leave their legacy. And interestingly enough, I never thought about it that way, but one of my friends said, man, congratulations, you've got a legacy you're leaving. And I thought, oh, that's true. I'm leaving. I've created something myself that will help other people, my scalable contribution that will make a difference while I sleep.
Yeah. But you've I'm just becoming acquainted with what you've done to take that perspective that you have there to a wonderful new realm, which I think you call real-time books. Could you tell me, and therefore those listening, a bit about that? Because I find it very consistent with what you've just said in terms of building up to that level of
so in the course of a person becoming a thought leader, they have to share their knowledge. Mm-hmm. And how a person becomes a thought leader is there's these competencies. First is you got to build models based on practice and tools and solutions, and you got to build them. And then you need to teach people about them and build a workshop around it. And then you got to publish on it. And then you've got to build evidence around it and build a community of practice that follows it and begins to learn how to use it. And then you build and on top of that, you continuously learn, because by the time you get your one book published, by the time you see it on the shelf, you're already on to your next one, as a thought leader, right? Yeah. So, it's kind of old for you. It's old news. For others, it's brand new. But for you, it's old news. You're like on to the next thing. So those are the 5 competencies. And in the process of working with people who are building thought leadership and building stuff and adding stuff in the world, I've worked on the Change Handbook and then some other different compendiums of information. I've become really interested in finding ways so that people could create content, create that scalable knowledge, share it with others in print or text, as well as mixed media forms. And then out of that, because for the next edition of the Change Handbook, we decided not to do it as a section of authors. So me and my co-authors and editors decided not to do. So the second edition of the Change Handbook is it. It's done. It's lived its life. I'm not done. All these people that have done these methods and approaches that are practicing and developing methods and approaches and scaling them and sharing them in the world. And there's new approaches. You've heard of the old approaches that have been established: World Cafe, open space technology, appreciative inquiry, future search, and the list goes on. have people heard about liberating structures? Have people heard about fuel box? Have people heard about um, uh, wicked questions and those kinds of techniques and so forth? Theater of the oppressed out of Brazil. There's these techniques that are emerging all around the world that are helping people engage, and people are writing them up, scaling them, making them available, and people are beginning to follow and practice them. So
Yes.
this is about a place where people now are in this technology. We decided to create a digital book where you'd have a chapter with videos and supporting documents and links and a directory of experts, and that you could find all about each of the techniques. And so now you can nimbly look at crossover. Then someone said, hey, you got 100, because the change handbook had 64 methods in it. Now it's become the collaborative change library. It has 125. And with the 64 or the 125, the common question is, how do I pick? And then second, once I pick the ones I like, do I have to have the whole book? Can I just have my own the pieces I want? And we
Yes.
thought, well, yeah, we need to figure a way so that people could, like, say, boom, 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 make their own playlist of content.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got mixed media. Every one of the techniques and methodologies have handouts and templates, and they have videos and all kinds of cool stuff, and they have an association and a community to connect into, blogs and all that kind of stuff. How can I read this chapter and get all of that all in one place around appreciative inquiry, open space, future search, theater of the oppressed, wicked questions, fuel box, and the list goes on and on and on of these amazing approaches that are doing great work in the world. And let me tell you, they have thousands of people using their techniques, all the ones I just mentioned.
I have to tell you, you're making me drool. I mean, this
Yeah.
is, if I were 30, 40 years younger, like some of your 48-year-olds, I would be going, finally,
Yeah.
I have a future in my way of thinking, in my way of teaching, in my eclectic way of mixing and matching. And I used to do it by whatever means available as I
Yeah.
went through my career. And now I'm thinking, now I have some hope.
Yeah. And there's a digital platform to do that. Right.
And it's digital, and and what I'm hearing also is that it's dynamic. So whereas I have a good friend who was carried on Joseph Duran's work in Total Quality,
Okay.
and you know how important, and
Oh, yeah.
they had a lot of methods, and they had a lot of workbooks, and I was
Right.
on the board of Duran for the years that they were figuring out what to do next, because suddenly people weren't reading 1,000 page of the Duran Handbook on Quality. Like,
Right.
wow. And so Joe and his son started moving toward electronic based teaching, which was terrific. But so I've actually witnessed exactly what you're talking about, because Joe in particular had so much to share, and sitting down there and methodically revising those chapters, it was, and his big concern was, who's going to read this? So there you go. I will
Right.
promise you that I'll be
Yeah.
telling
And
Joe
right.
DeFeo about this world that you're crafting. But I think from a practitioner standpoint, teacher as practitioner, assembling with and for those students, those kind of mixed and matched and intentionally theme driven kinds of experiences, which we used to call products, is really exciting, very exciting. How far along has that? Well, what do you name this new world that you've described, and how far along is it in development?
So what happened is this was all focused on the collaborative change library book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a 6-volume set. And so we're figuring it out for that. And then I share it with a friend like you, and they say, well, I got we got this. Can we put it on there? Then I got somebody else who says, we got this collection of content. Can we put it on there? And then somebody says, hey, we're in a company and we have a whole bunch of stuff and we want to can we put it on there so that our consultants can pull from our knowledge base and build their own books for clients and projects and their own stuff, picking and choosing pieces of the content and mixing and matching, like you said. So, yeah. And so we started working on that. And then what emerged is what we now call My Library
My
as a
library. Mm-hmm.
platform, technology platform, and publishing platform, a living content platform, a living body of knowledge is what I call it as well.
I love it.
And so now we are in the process of nimbly doing stuff. So you want to hear some fun things? One,
Sure.
Edgar Schein writes an email, sends it to Gene Bartunek, who's former president of the Academy of Management.
Yep.
Gene shares it with a small group of people. Say, hey, Edgar's rant. He called it, "Here's my rant," is what he said. And so then all of a sudden, and Peter Senge was in the group, and Sandra Janoff, and a few other people were in this little group. And so there was a lot of diatribing and emails and stuff. As I'm listening to it, I said to Teo, what if we took their emails and made them into little essays, and we called it COVID-19 Provocations for Humanity?
I love it.
And then someone sends, which I shared with you, the Thomas Roberts YouTube video on the Great Realization, his reflections. And he's a poet, very young poet with small kids, and he's just a beautiful young man. And the story within 10 days had 4.5 million views. That's amazing. And I sent him a little note on Facebook and said, hey, thanks for sharing this. And he wrote back like within 30 minutes, you're welcome. And I said, I'm going to share yours on this platform that we're building. And then we grabbed that. And then Fridtjof Capra wrote something and put it out there, reflecting on from 2050. And so we just grabbed that. And someone else wrote something, and someone else wrote something. We just threw it all on there. It's free. People can now go and see the best of these reflections, these creative provocations around our pandemic and what we're facing. Second, you ready for the next cool one?
I'm ready.
So it's graduation time. All these kids are graduating, and what did everybody do around the planet to support them? You saw all these graduation speeches, amazing graduation speeches that people are offering, 20, 30, 40 of them for the kids.
Carefully crafted in most cases.
Carefully crafted. They're all out there. So we're taking all of them, and we're creating another collection called, Graduation 2020 commencement speeches. So people will be able to go, click, read it, watch it, find more about each person, right? And we're just putting that together. We're going to offer it out there real quick. So it's just, and we'll have it done within 2 weeks. Boom, it'll be out.
And that's the point I definitely want to underscore among all these wonderful things you've already shared, Steve, that it'll be done within 2 weeks. The immediacy, which is certainly something we've learned a great deal of because of this COVID isolation we're experiencing, is right. We go to Zoom now. We go to any other way possible to stay connected with people, and we also understand the value of our time like never before. So you've put those things together, capturing these emergent and spontaneously shared thoughts, as well as more organized fashion, and it's available for people who want to build their own book or books. Yeah. Now, I know eventually there'll be a need to finance that and make that happen, but believe me, the energy that I've already felt and looked at prior to this call, this is going to be big, and yet it's closely associated with your philosophy, and with your university. So I think it draws very positive attention to Bowling Green, as I've known about a long time, saying, hey, guess what they're doing over at Bowling Green? Even if it moves off into a private venture at some point, it doesn't matter. The fact is that it was birthed in a school of your stature, and in your desire to be very much associated with the qualities of teaching as well as research and all the rest. So that is terrific. And I would very much be happy to share what I could do. But more importantly, overall for this podcast series, is if Peter Vail were on this call right now, first he would have said, be quiet, Dave, I want to hear more from Steve. And then he would say, oh man, just like I did, this would have been my dream. because Peter wrote essays. His books, the ones that did get published, were largely a collection. He wrote them in, as the thoughts came to him, and he organized them into chapters. But essentially, he was a natural thought leader, and he loved more than offering those thoughts, seeing someone benefit. So when we started this podcast series, it was because we were pinched off in every other way to get keep Peter's thoughts flowing out there. And I certainly wanted to be part of that. So,
Right.
but now I could see how we could take this 45 episode podcast series, 30 of which have Peter's voice and his thoughts in them, and say, okay, now I've got another way to make sure that people find this opportunity to learn from one of our great thinkers, really, in my estimation. And it's also someone you like to listen to. Even in his distress, when his voice was very tough, you could hear that humanity
Yeah.
coming through.
Yeah.
And so
Awesome.
you've really given a lot of credit and added a lot of excitement to our podcast series, Steve. As we're moving toward the end of the time that I need to allot for the benefit of our listeners,
Yeah.
let me think of something that pulls us all the way back around to the start. I must say that your choice to build a personal development set of practices from the inside out, then around that, your professorship and all the other accoutrements that go with it is something that we definitely appreciate in everyone we've had a conversation with. It's a real awareness that self matters, and this notion of trying to present ourselves to students as some kind of other being to stretch the point, closed and basically there to deliver could be a way of the past, I hope, in some ways,
I
because
hope so too.
the kind of mutual, what Peter called co-inquiry, was something that he relished. And I'm thinking, perhaps in your going forward, how has your teaching now been inspired by these other things that you're doing for the doctoral program and for the collection? How you've seen students, particularly now that you've had, I assume, to be remote for
Yeah.
a chunk of the semester?
Yeah. I think, with remote teaching and in-person teaching, there's synchronous and asynchronous aspects of both. You and I being here together in a synchronous fashion builds trust, connection, intimacy, and we have a great conversation. Granted, there's another level it's not necessarily another level, to be quite honest with you. I think there's just a different flavor to the intimacy that we have when we're in person. And most people are familiar with the in-person portion, so this online portion, live synchronous experience we're having, is new. And it's also full of intimacy, full of connection and depth. So, I think we want to look at that as people are going online. We have the asynchronous and synchronous fashions of that, as well as in the classroom.
True.
When we're in person classes, we have synchronous and asynchronous aspects. But here's what I want to say about all of this. Students have been lulled in rows and aisles to develop neural pathways in their brain that enables them to listen and speak when spoken to. They go through K through 12, walk into college classrooms, and they get a PowerPoint lecture that came around about 20 years ago, which had acetates before it, but a lecture in which they sit in rows and aisles and are learning at the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy, which is define and recite and regurgitate. And if I can do that, and if you, as my professor, will come in and summarize the reading for me so that I don't really have to read my stuff before I come in, you summarize it and then give me a study guide so that I can take the test, wink, wink. I'll give you a good student evaluation and you give me a good grade. That is the conspiracy that both faculty and students have been dancing and playing with each other for probably 30 to maybe 100 years.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. So here's the thing. It's all on its head. We have been already moving towards active learning, flipped classroom, problem-based learning, situated learning.
Mhm.
different ways to say we've got to teach people when we're in person and live, when we're alive together, we got to do things when we're live together that we couldn't otherwise do. So
Right.
therefore, the lecture has to get out. Now, what happens? Go watch a lecture. You're going to come to class and you're going to solve a problem with other people, and it's going to be a tough problem, and you're going to turn it in by the time we're done together in person, live or online, live. I walk in. I haven't read. I can't contribute. So what do? Class sucks. Professor's not prepared. I hate it. I'm going to give you a poor student evaluation. Professor says, I'll lecture a little. Professor says, I'll lecture a little bit more. Professor says, I'll lecture a little bit more. And before you know it, there's no time to do deep learning. And you get back to the way it was. However, we have been starting to slowly go forward and 2 steps back and forward and a step back, recognizing the power of active, flipped, situated, problem-based learning. And we're beginning to see it. Kids are beginning to develop the skills. They're starting to do the reading outside. So when they come in, they're ready to dive deeper. But the teacher now has to be a true co-inquiry partner with the student in creating an experience which now moves beyond I am a professor and you are a student and you don't know me and I don't know you, because we're going to have to deal with some tough issues like accountability. We're going to have to deal with some tough issues like, hey, I'm going to call you out. Hey, I expect stuff to be done. Hey, we're going to have to be better human beings in this new environment. And that is where we're emerging. And that's what's happening. And the pandemic and the stuff with online learning has created the situation where we can accelerate this case. And I have to be honest with you, or frank with you, I think a lot of faculty are going to have to go away or get on the bus at this point. There's a lot of people, can we help people along? No, no more. You got to get nimble with technology. You got to know how to create these dynamic learning experiences, weaving together it in a way that is absolutely taking the learning deeper. And now students are going to have to spend more time in the content outside of class, which is going to piss them off. And because they're going to have to come in ready, but now you're making me work so much. But really, we expect 2 hours for every 1 hour of in-class stuff. But students, the expectation is 10 minutes for every in-class hour. They expect to study for about 30 minutes a week, not for a 3-hour class. They don't expect to study 6 hours outside before they walk in. But they don't know that was the original intention. So now we have to go there. And faculty do, and universities are closing down. Some of them are dealing with $50 million budget deficits and cuts in 1 year.
1 year.
And a lot of challenges. Who's going to be left standing? Sears or Amazon? Sears was in the catalog business. Why the heck did they not face the reality, call their people out, and say, we've got to make this? No, let's just do it nicely. We'll get there. We're too big to fail. And we're fine. And I don't know what Amazon's doing over there, but that's just way too far out there.
3% of
And
the 3% of the retail, no big deal.
yeah.
Until
So
this.
anyway, that's where we're at. I mean, the opportunity, and who's going to be excited by the opportunity? Not that this is a burden. This is a great opportunity to accelerate our movement to becoming true teachers of the new learning environment that we always have known was there before.
And here's what I suggest as we're wrapping here, that the student is going to change too, is changing.
Yes.
That I believe that the sobering that they're experiencing and the inspiration they're getting from different sources is telling them, I'm not going to be competitive in this world. I'm not going to be chosen. No one is going to give me a steady paycheck for mailing it in or following the rules. I am going to be an entrepreneur for my life.
Right. Yep.
Whether I'm employed or not, I've got to develop something that's attractive to others, or I'm, someone else will. And I would go to a school where I'm hearing on the buzz that, hey, this is a place where you come out different, not just with a grade. And what Peter said often in our conversations was the change a business school needs to make is that every professor is driving for the goal that a student will be a better learner overall when they finish that course, and altogether better learner when they finish that program, so that when they're out in the world, they'll be superior learners. Because otherwise, school, toolkits come and go, and titles come and go, but it's the learning practice that we have to help them cultivate. And Steve, you're doing it as a teacher, you're doing it as a program developer, you're doing it as someone who has a marvelous new digital world that we can enter and benefit from. So I can't tell you how delighted I am that we've had this chance to become acquainted. I want to know you better. Hopefully you'll put out the word about our podcast, and maybe it'll even pop up in the collection.
I think it should.
Thank you. Thank you very much.